Dixon, back from a little hiatus. I had to go out to New Orleans to do a little research and some things. So I'm back. I'm going to talk a little bit about this day in baseball history. We'll call it This Day in Black Baseball History. In case you've never followed me before, my name is Phil Dixon, and I go by Phil S. Dixon, and I'm an African American baseball historian. But I know a little bit about all baseball, but I kind of specialize on the Negro Leagues, and because I've been doing Negro League research for over 45 years, if you can imagine that, 45 years. People still say, man, how old are you? Well, I started when I was like 23. And before then, I even collected baseball cards starting back about the second grade. So it's been a number of years that I've been deeply enmeshed in this history. I'm also an author, and I have several books out there. My first two books came out in 1992. Probably some people listening here who weren't even born in 1992. So I might have books that are older than you guys. The first award-winning book was 1992, was the Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. It won the Casey Award for the best baseball book of the year. So that gives you just a little bit on me. And like I said, I've been out of town, so I'm always doing research. I was down in the New Orleans area, and I was thinking about when I went this time, the first time I went to New Orleans doing research for baseball, believe it or not, it was 1992. And I had come through there, and where did I go? Because I had gone through the whole South. I remember I left New Orleans and I headed for Mount Olive, Mississippi, because I was going to see Howard Easterling. Howard Easterling, who played for the Homestead Grays, he was in a nursing home. But when I was in New Orleans, I was looking for John Wright and Lloyd Ducky Davenport. Those were two guys I was looking for. That was in 1982, and the fall of 1982. And so I went there looking for those guys, and I didn't find them. But in this particular case, I had to get on the road and keep on going. And that trip was a game changer for the whole history of the Negro Baseball Leagues, because prior to my work, there were really I can say maybe two serious guys that were doing real credible work. And it was Jim Riley, and he was out of Florida, and John Hallway was out of New York, and they were heavily involved. Now, a guy named Robert Peterson had put out a book, but he wasn't doing much of anything. He had gone on to other projects. So it was basically us three, and I was the only African American that was on this subject. And I was a young guy, brought a lot of energy that those guys didn't have, and I stayed with it. And I've been out here probably as long as any of these guys who are now finding this history worthy to be written about. So I was one of the early innovators of that. So I'm real proud of that. And so anyway, I always like to tell a little bit about myself, and let's say going back to New Orleans. And if you go to my my social media page, you can go to my Facebook page. You can either put in Phil S. Dixon or at Negro League Man. That's where a lot of people know me from that little title there on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, if you go to YouTube, you can find me as X at Negro League Man or Phil S. Dixon. Also, I have a web page. I'm going to do more to update that web page. I think I need to start telling some of those stories there. And it's NLB, like Negro League Baseball Alive.com. And I've done everything I can to keep these players alive for over 40 years. I fought for everybody. I'm not what they call a one-trick pony, so I don't get on one guy and say, if I get this guy into the Hall of Fame, my work is done. Now, my work is never done, and there's probably at least another 15, 20 guys that I could really fight for right now to this very day that aren't getting the ink and aren't getting the love that they should get. So that just tells you a little bit about me. So I'm going to jump in here, and as you well know, I give a This Day in African American Baseball History, Black History, and then I give you some commentary with it. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody in. I see a few people, and I don't know if these people have followed me before. So if you followed me before, just say hello. But you're welcome to come back. So let's jump right in here. So today is August 27th, 2025. So let's go back and look in history at this famous day, August 27th. So I'm going to look over to the side here. I don't have any sophisticated things, so I'm going to have to look to the side. So we're going to go to August 27th. This is going to be 1909. Topeka Jack Johnson's Kansas City, Kansas Giants defeated Rube Foster's Chicago Leland Giants by a 5-4 score at Kansas City, Kansas, Riverside Park to claim the World's Championship title. Now, I happen to know a little bit about that park because they played that game in my hometown, Kansas City, Kansas. And Riverside Park was at 2nd and Franklin Avenue. And when I came there, when I was born, it was the elementary school right in that area. So, and the interesting thing, it's not that close to the river. The Missouri River is quite a ways from there, but I guess that's what they wanted to call it, Riverside Park. Also, the African American High School, Sumner High School, also played there. And some all-time greats, Dick Whitworth, who ended up with the Chicago Union Giants, Chicago American Giants. He played with Hilldale. He was a pitcher. He started his career there. Wilbur Bullet Rogan started his career right there in Riverside Park. He was playing with the Palace Colts, and so was Dick Whitworth. They go on to be famous ball players in the Negro Baseball League. You can look them up. And I always say, hey, don't take my word for anything. You can look this stuff up. And some of the things I'm giving you, you can't find. And so that's what we want to talk about. So anyway, Rube Foster comes to Kansas City, and Kansas City, Kansas Giants had an amazing team that year. And they had a long winning streak, and I'm going to go to that in a minute, which went on another fact. But Rube Foster comes in for a 3-game series, and when they come to Kansas City, they have to face a young phenom who was pitching for the Kansas City, Kansas Giants out of Lexington, Missouri, and that was William Bill Lindsay. This guy was probably, in my estimation, the greatest teenage pitcher that ever lived. He was kind of like the Michael Jackson of his family, and the Lindsay family had about 7 or 8 kids in their family, boys, and they all played baseball. And they had a couple of cousins, and they had enough to make their team. So as a whole, generally the Lexington Tigers were really the Lindsay family. And so Bill Lindsay, the youngest of that group, was outstanding, simply outstanding. He was so great that not only did he beat Rube Foster's team in 1909, but in 1910, Rube Foster came back and picked up Bill Lindsay and took him to Chicago. And he played for Rube Foster until his passing, which was 1913, 14, somewhere in there. And he died from tuberculosis. Died young. I think he was like 24 years old. Bill Lindsay was simply outstanding. So Rube Foster was injured. He had gotten injured playing in Chicago that year. He had a hairline fracture and in his leg, so he didn't pitch in that series. They did throw. I know Walter Ball pitched one of the games, and anyway, the Kansas City, Kansas Giants ended up catching the Leland Giants at a good time, and they beat them in 2 games out of the 3-game series, with Bill Lindsay winning one of the games. I can't remember who won. I don't know if it was Sonny Jim or Andrew Skinner. I can't remember who won the other game. Andrew Skinner, I knew his family too, and he had family. He was from Atchison, so I knew Andrew Skinner's family. Actually, I went to church with one of his cousins. I'm an AME church. I'm an AME person, and of course, we were all members of First AME, and that's where Andrew Skinner's cousin was. So anyway, I'm giving you history that you don't get you don't get this stuff. Believe me, you can't find in the book, so I'm giving you some real stuff. So anyway, that was the series in the Kansas City, Kansas Giants, who were managed by Topeka Jack Johnson, ending up winning that game. And they went on to say that we are the world's champions, and Rube Foster always debated that they weren't the world's champions. That same year, the St. Paul Gophers also beat the Leland Giants, and so they claimed, and this is the Black World Championship. And what's interesting is the Major League, the National and American League, they just called it the World Series, but really you could call it the White Championship. So this was the Black Championship of the world. And that was in 1909. And 3 of those games were played in Kansas City, Kansas. So that gives you just a little background on some of that. And then let's go to another one here. Okay, this one, August 27, 1952. Henry Aaron, 18-year-old shortstop for Eclair, that's Eclair, Wisconsin, is named Rookie of the Year in the Northern League, and he was entered on 75 voting ballots by sports writers, managers, and umpires. And the vote total was never more than it was never more than, let's see, 3 close. Okay, so he was more than his 3 closest rivals. He had more votes. So Henry Aaron. Do I need to tell you anything about Henry Aaron? Hank Aaron, you probably know that. Number 44, played with Milwaukee. And of course, later on Milwaukee moved. And so he ended up in Atlanta. And of course, one time I got a chance, well, I'll put it this way. In the latter part of his career, his last few years, he was playing for the Milwaukee Brewers. And me and a good friend of mine, he just passed last year, Fred Powell, we wanted to see Hank Aaron because we were American League City, and we never got a chance to see some of the National League teams. I did see the Pittsburgh Pirates come in for an exhibition game, did see Roberto Clemente, and I was out there that day. But with Hank Aaron, they switched him over to the American League, so he's right at the end of his career. We go out there, we're waiting to see Hank Aaron. The game starts, he's not in the lineup, and I never got a chance to see him play live, even though I paid to see him, never saw him. Years later, Hank Aaron was in Kansas City, and my son, he was attending Fisk University, and so me and my wife went down to a program where Hank was being honored. And so I had a picture, and then I had one for my son. I had one for myself, one for my son. So I went down to Hank, and Hank was surrounded by people. And so my wife asked Hank, would he sign this? And Hank said, well, I tell you what, if I start signing for you, everybody's going to want an autograph. So he said, come back after the program tonight. So after the program ended, we went back, and they had a bunch of people stopping everybody from going back to see Hank. He was back there. And so, but Hank spotted us out. He said, hey, let those 2 people in. And Hank didn't know I did baseball research or anything like that. But he was nice to us, and he was nice to me and my wife. And we were able to go and get a picture of Hank and assign to my son. And my son, I gave it to him for Christmas that year. And it's personalized to my son, Philip. And so, and of course, he signed the other one I had too. So I was happy to do that. But I did meet Hank. Unfortunately, didn't get a chance to see him play. But on August 27, 1952, he was picked as the Rookie of the Year in the Northern League. And of course, he goes on to hit 755 Major League home runs. The rest is history. Okay, let's go to this one. August 27th, let's go to this one. August 27th, 1932. I'm going to go to that one first. Cole's American Giants ended the Kansas City Monarchs' long winning streak of 42 games with a 2-1 win at Chicago's American Giant Park. Well, first of all, that American Giant Park was Shoreline Park, and that used to be the White Sox old field. And it was in 1910, the White Sox played their last game there, and then they opened up Comiskey Park. And so in 1911, they ended up, John Shirley and Andrew Root Foster entered into an agreement. And so the American Giants began playing there. So they were still playing there in 1932. Of course, Root Foster passed away in 1930. So at that time, I think Robert Cole had the team. So yeah, because Cole's American Giants. And so the Kansas City Monarchs, they got together late in the year. So they didn't start out beginning of the year because we were in the Depression. So a lot of the guys that they had were playing with the Homestead Grays. Some of them were playing over in St. Louis, different areas in the Eastern Colored League. Some, I think Dink Mather was in Cleveland. But J.L. Wilkerson put his team together about midway in the season. And because it was so tough that year, some of the players weren't getting paid in the East. So they came on and joined the Kansas City Monarchs, who had a little more money as far as, and a lot of bookies out west through Kansas, Nebraska. I don't know if they went into Colorado, but they certainly went into Iowa and into Wisconsin. So uh, they came and hey, 42 game winning streak, and they had some good players. Charlie Beverly, the lefty, was going strong that year. Quincy Troop came, he was with them. I interviewed Troop many times. James Papa Bell was on that team. I interviewed James Papa Bell. Willie Wells played shortstop, interviewed him. George Giles played first base. I interviewed him. Chet Brewer pitched. I interviewed him. I interviewed half that team. So I can tell you a lot about that 1932 Kansas City Monarchs. But they were going pretty strong, and they had a 42 game winning streak. I'm not sure, but I can guarantee you no American or National League team ever had a streak that long. And some of these streaks were even longer. You know, I mentioned the Kansas City Kansas Giants in 1909. They had a 54 game winning streak. And I'd love to talk about that sometime. What I will tell you, a guy named Fred Langford. The first time I heard that was probably about 1981, maybe. I was interviewing Fred Langford. He was 94 years old. He actually played with the Kansas City Kansas Giants, and he was the first one to tell me about the 54 game winning streak. Now, years later, I was able to go and find that in the newspapers, but the first time I heard it, it was oral history, and that was Fred Langford. So, Fred Langford, another name we don't talk about, but he was a great catcher, and he started off with Bullet Rogan and Dick Whitworth, and he knew them all, and he was able to tell me intimate details about playing baseball in that era. He could tell me how hard somebody threw. Matter of fact, he mentioned Andrew Skinner. And he would catch Andrew Skinner, and he would tell me like this guy had a light baseball. You could catch him with a fielder's glove, and he talking about another guy had a heavy ball. And Fred Langford ran a restaurant and a pool room off of 10th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. So he knew everybody. And Fred Langford was one of the greatest interviews. But you gotta think about it. Fred Langford, I'm interviewing him in 1982. He's 94. This guy would be ancient by today's history. But that is the wealth of knowledge that I was able to pick up from all these people. So we'll go to one more, and we'll go to this one, and we'll probably end here. August 27, 1963, outfielder Willie Mays hits home run number 400. He became the first right-handed batter and the 10th man in the National League history to log as many circuit clouds. The home run came in the third inning off of Kurt Simmons, the San Francisco Giants, and the San Francisco Giants won the game 7-2. So I remember Kurt Simmons. Anything in the National League. I just see a lot of National League guys. Remember, I'm in Kansas City. We're American League town. I would go to the park all the time, sometimes hang around. But I knew a lot of the American League guys. I actually saw them. And but I didn't see Kurt Simmons. But in 1967, I think it was, I had that top set, the whole set. The baseball courts. Kurt Simmons was in that set, as was Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and a lot of other great people. Mickey Mantle was in that set too. About this, and so we're going to close off tonight. I do want to thank you for joining, and once again, I missed a few days because I was in New Orleans and had to go down on the since I was in town. It was the 20th anniversary of the Katrina hurricane and the flood down there. So I was able to go down to the Superdome and walk around there and think about that great incident. And it was 20 years ago. It doesn't seem like it, but it was. So I want to thank you all for joining in today. And feel free to follow me. And if you want to put some questions in here, you can go ahead and do that. And so somebody said, please keep telling these stories. I met Buck. I guess that meaning Buck O'Neill. Now it could be meaning, Buck Leonard. I don't know, but they said Buck many times as a kid. So I'm going to assume that that's Buck O'Neill, right? Buck O'Neill, who was around Kansas City, knew Buck very well. And I still go out to where Buck is buried on Memorial Day, and I always lay a wreath. And I think you could, if you follow me, you'll kind of see some of the things where I go out. And because he was a military guy, I take my trumpet and I go out and play taps for him sometimes. So yeah, Buck was a great guy, and they still talk about Buck quite a bit. And then somebody says, I'm from KC. Love to see anyone talk about the Negro League. Our museum is amazing. Oh yeah, it's amazing. You know, one of these days, I need to come on. I'm a co-founder of the museum, and I need to come on and tell the real story of how the museum got started. In the back of the museum, there's a historic plaque, and it's all wrong. It's all wrong. And it says Buck O'Neill and a group of local historians. Well, actually, it was the other way around. It was the local historians and Buck O'Neill. And 5 of us signed the original incorporation, and we signed it in 1990. And 3 of us are still living. Buck and Slick Surratt were the other 2, and they're gone on to glory. And so the other ones were historians, and we're still alive, and we don't always get our accolades, but just know that we're still here. And in my case, I'm still here telling the story. But one of these days, I'm going to do a specific live to tell the true story of how the Negro League Museum started, and a story that has never been told. I bet you would like that. So anyway, guys, it's 21 minutes. We're into this. I don't think everybody stays all the whole time, but if you just bounced in for a moment, that was great. So I'm going to sign off. This is Phil Dixon, and I'm a baseball historian, and happy to talk about baseball, all kinds of baseball, Major League, Negro League, and I certainly talk about the history, as you can see. So anyway, we're going to sign off. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have some new facts. So we'll be talking about, we're talking about August the 28th tomorrow. So it's always something. And this list, I have to tell you this list. You might find this interesting. Years ago, when I was doing baseball research, we're talking about maybe 30 years ago, I would find interesting facts. So I wanted to remember them. So I started putting them in a spreadsheet. And originally it was for a calendar that I was going to do. So I just had put one a day. But then I started to find a lot of really interesting facts. And I said, these need to be recorded. So I started keeping this spreadsheet. And so the things I'm talking to you about are things that I've researched for at least 30 years. And some of these facts, you know, it's not, you know, I try to stay away from the little cheapies like so-and-so born on this date. If I don't have anything else, I might tell you that. But there's so many things that happen year-round related to the African-American baseball experience that nobody is talking about. And I'm just happy that I can talk about it. And I'm going to do my best to continue to fight for these players and to tell their stories just like I've been doing for 40 years. And I'm going to do it in a way that no one's ever done it. This is Phil Dixon. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening, and I'll look for you when I come back. Be sure and subscribe so you can catch me. And I'm always putting something online, not always these lives. I've got other things when I go to make appearances and things like that. So thank you, guys. You have a nice day. It's been my pleasure.